is that using these data points into certain types of mathematical equations, you can find patterns in collective human behavior. And what these patterns mean is this, is that when this set of criteria, okay, is present in the market, that there is simply a higher probability than not. In other words, there's a higher probability, or what I'm going to call an edge, a higher probability of one thing happening over another, that other people are actually going to come into the market and bid it higher from here or offer it lower from here. There's just, in other words, when the pattern is present, this collective pattern is present, it will repeat itself. But the problem is that it repeats itself on a random basis because even though the actual mathematical criteria is exactly correct or exactly the same.
You can't, mathematical models can't predict human beings.
That's right. Mathematical models can't predict who the actual individuals who are going to come into the market and actually do it.
Right.
In other words, it takes someone to do it. When you put on a trade, if you're not going to make your trade a winner by bidding the market, if you bought something by bidding the market, you know,
using all of my money.
Using all your money you know, you bought something at 10, you could actually wipe out all the offers and bid it to 11 or bid it to 12 or bid it to 13. Now, if the price is at 13, all the trades that you put on at 10 are winners, right?
Yeah, but I still bought it at 11 and 12.
Yeah, but well, you're averaging up. But the point is, all the trades that you put on were winners. You actually made yourself a winner.
That's correct.
But what I'm saying is that when you don't trade at that level, we are actually obliged to other traders to come in to buy something at a worse price than what we thought was low to make us winners.
So what you're saying is most of us out there are dependent upon someone else to move the market for us. We're trying to identify that pattern, obviously using the WiseTrade software to find those common entries. But again, it's a random event. Well, we're putting the edge, you said, in our favor.
Yeah. Jared, when you put on a trade, okay, when you put on a trade, do you know who, now what we've done is we've reduced the market down to these terms, okay, that it takes someone else to make us a winner, right?
Correct.
Okay. When you put on a trade, do you think about who that might be, who might come into the market to actually make you a winner?
No, of course not.
Yeah, no. And if it turns out to be a winning trade, do you know who those traders were or who that trader was that actually made you a winner?
No.
Is there any way to know?
No.
There might be, but it'd be pretty hard to find out, right? I mean, you could go to the clearing firm, you know, the firm that clears the
bottom line is
bottom line. Yeah, exactly. So what I'm saying is that when the pattern presents itself, like, okay, I have an edge here. When the pattern presents itself, we don't have any idea of who is actually going to come into the market to do this for us. And so there's no point in analyzing. There's no point in judging. There's no point in trying to figure out whether it's going to work or not. It would be like, for an example, if I said to you, Jared, I'm going to give you a coin, and this coin is weighted in a way where it's going to come up heads 70% of the time. Right. Now, just because I know mathematically and statistically that this pattern of coming up heads 70% of the time exists, is there still any way for me to know the actual sequence to heads to tails?
Of course not. It's an infinite.
Well, no, I'm saying, do I know the sequence? In other words, I'm going to flip the coin 100 times, and statistically it's going to come up heads 70% of the times. I still don't know which flips are going to
come up heads.
Which flips are going to come up heads. They say which flips. It's not the times. Right. Which ones? In other words, we flip the coin once, it comes up heads. Flip the coin twice, it comes up heads. The next one's tails. The next one's tails. The next one's tails. In other words, we could have streaks of heads or tails. Okay, we could have streaks in there. The point that I'm making is that there is no way to know the actual sequence.
But at the end of the day, we know we have 70%.
So what that does, that obligates us, if we want to be able to trade our methodology in an effective fashion, to be able to utilize this methodology in a way where we can extract the maximum amount of profit that it makes available to us based on the pattern that it identifies. We have to do it in certain ways. In other words, our mind has to be free to be able to execute these trades without making trading errors. And the trading errors come from believing that because the pattern is present, that it's going to give me a winning trade on this one. This trade is going to be a winner.
You can't think that way.
No, you can't think that way.
You can't think that
That's the way the typical trader thinks.
Right.
The typical trader thinks, I'm not going to put this trade on unless I think it's going to be a winner. Or why would I do it? And it skews our expectations. See, it messes our expectations up.
Let's back up a couple seconds here. There's some great stuff here, Mark, and I hope our traders are getting all of this. You're basically saying, and this makes a whole lot of sense to me, and I hope it's getting through to you guys, we have a tool that gives us an edge. Whatever it is. Right. Even if that edge is 2% or 3%, I don't know if we can...
No, it's more than that.
Maybe more than that.
What do you mean more than that? It's a lot more than that. It's far more than 50%.
Well, I was saying greater than 50. Okay. I was using edge is defined as...
Yeah. Okay.
So maybe 55 or 56% of the time. Right. Let's just say...
And the thing is, it doesn't even have to be 50% to actually make consistent money. That's what people can realize, too. That depending on what the ratio is between what you have to risk to find out if a trade is going to work and how much profit it generates when it does, you don't even need a 50% win-loss ratio. Right. As a matter of fact, back in the 80s, there are, one of the most famous traders from the 80s, Richard Dennis, on a percentage basis, 95% of his trades were losers. 95%. But the 5% that were winners were monsters. And he was able to put on trades at a 95% loss ratio and make, at the most at one point, I think around 1987 or 1988, he had $400 million.
Is that using his edge? Or his money management, or a combination of both?
A combination of all of it.
Okay.
And see, one of the things he did too, and this is something I ought to really qualify with, he would use orders to actually probe the market. See, there's one of the things, I don't want to leave what we're doing right now, but I'm going to just kind of divert just for a moment,
okay,
and so that people understand that one of the first things to be a successful trader that you have to learn, other than the fact of finding a good edge, meaning something that puts a pattern, a collective pattern that your edge identifies, that puts the odds in your favor, right, that there's a higher probability of one thing happening over another once this pattern is present in the market, is that you have to learn how to think in probabilities. In other words, you have to get your expectations aligned with the way the market actually exists.
Right.
And when you do, in other words, when you learn these kind of mental skills and you're able to execute your trades without fear and without hesitation, without analyzing, or even without thinking for that matter, because you don't need to think. I'll give you an example. A professional trader, what a professional trader thinks about when there's an edge present is, does he think about whether the edge is going to work? Absolutely not. Because he knows, he has learned there's no point. Right. There's no point in analyzing or judging or building a case for or against whether that trade is going to work, because he understands the human component. Okay. Right. But what he does think about is he thinks about the risk. How much do I have to risk? How far am I going to let the market go against this position to tell me that other traders are either going to come into the market and make me a winner or not? And he also has a plan for how he's going to take profits.
Right.
But the typical trader, what does the typical trader do?
They don't have a plan.
Well,
or they think about the trade too much. They think about, is this going to be a winner? Is this going to be a loser for me?
The exact opposite of the professional.
So what the professional does is basically...
And then once they make up their mind that it's a winning trade, they don't predefine their risk, do they?
Right.
And they also don't have a plan to take profits because they think
it's going to be a winner.
It's going to go on forever.
And I want to talk about that. We're running up on the break here, but I want to talk about that on the other side. But what you're saying is, the bottom line is, the professional sees the entry. He sees the pattern, whatever it is, the edge, enters in, not thinking if I'm going to win or I'm going to lose, but has a money management strategy in place, knows exactly how much he wants to win or is willing to win and how much he's willing to lose or risk.
Right.
Exactly. Now, does he put a cap on the upside? Does he put a cap on his win side?
It's not a matter of a cap. It's a matter of his assessment of how much potential there is. Okay. In other words, see, the problem is on a winning trade, we're obligated in a sense to make these never-ending decisions as to what the risk to reward ratio is. In other words, as the market's going in my favor, what's the risk of finding out that it's going to go further? And that's why so many professional traders or people who teach trading advocate scaling out of positions.
Right. Mark, this is all great stuff. We're going to have to wind it up. We've got to go to a break, guys. It's already time, as I said, for a break. We'll be back with much more with Mark Douglas here in 3 minutes. We'll see you soon here on WTV.